What's up, guys? Dr. Ashori here at drashori.com. I'm a board certified family medicine physician, and I talk about healthy aging. So, binge eating, I've talked about it a few times, and not everybody deals with binge eating. So, if this is not your video, skip to the next one. Certain people are binge eaters, so they have an overeating problem, and certain people are overgrazers, which means they're constantly snacking throughout the day. If you have good weight, if you have good blood pressure, good cholesterol, obviously it's not a big concern if you're a snacker, even if you're eating every 2 hours, even if you eat very large meals, as long as your health overall is good, your energy is good, and your body is moving in the right direction, I wouldn't worry about these things. There's no value in you worrying about something that's not causing any problems. But I want to share my own experience with binge eating. So I think it started when I was younger and my metabolism was high, but my anxiety level was high as well. So maybe in my teenage years, I kind of started eating large amounts of food at a time, and I noticed that it would decrease my anxiety level. And of course, people who are bingers are also either purgers or restrictors. So once college came around, I would aim for, I remember Taco Bell at UC Irvine, because it was easy for me to get, for very little money, to get a high volume of food into my stomach. This would often happen when I was very anxious, and unfortunately, because I didn't eat regularly, I would go a long time without noticing that I was actually hungry, or the things that I would eat would never really curb my hunger. So by the time I already had a lot of anxiety, I would get this internal hangriness where nobody outside would notice, but I would be super, super hungry and super, super anxious. So I would reach for large amounts of food. Let's not even go to the details because I know it can be a little bit unpleasant for some people to hear, but I would eat very, very large sums of food. And that would give me this sort of peace, this momentary anxiety relief for at least an hour or two. The side effect with that, unfortunately, was that I would also have severe bloating, acid reflux. I would have palpitations. I wouldn't sleep good that night. And for the next day or two, I would have a lot of digestion issues, as you can imagine, with a ton of Taco Bell food. And so what I would do the next day or two, because I was also conscious about my body, I didn't want to have a gut even in college, I didn't want to get fat, I would restrict. And restricting, unfortunately, increases your anxiety level. It creates even more hunger, so you're doomed to fail to go back to binging. My solution was to kind of punish myself. I think over the years, I would just like be very negative. I would have a lot of internal negative dialogue about what a failure I was, and you're such a loser. How can you eat like that? Then when YouTube came around, medical school and residency, I would try to look up some things that I could do. And there was advice about like draw the food before you eat it, give yourself 1 extra minute before you go binging. But inevitably, I would just binge. And I remember by then I had become an attending. I had become a young physician. So this is 2009. I had moved from Los Angeles to San Diego, and from San Diego to Portland, Oregon. And the habit was still there. In fact, I would say it had gotten much more severe in bursts, which meant that maybe I would go a week or 4 or 5 days without any binging. I would be eating totally normal. And then I would get this severe urge to binge, and I would go and grab my food from all the different fast food places, and I would binge. Of course, the anxiety went down, the stress, that internal feeling went down, but the palpitations, the terrible sleep, the nausea, the vomiting, the purging, unfortunately, and that followed by more restriction and fasting would be so much more pronounced. Finally, a time came when I started getting a little bit more into kind of like mental health and mindfulness, especially with my patients. Even though I was doing a lot of urgent care work and some family medicine work, I started realizing that maybe it's a mental state, maybe it's a mental health thing. So I never tried any medications per se, but I did look into, I think it was Overeaters Anonymous or something like that. And it didn't really sit well with me, especially because I was skinny. And so a lot of the overeaters already were very obese or morbidly obese. And so if somebody like me, who's pretty skinny, comes and goes to a meeting or is in an online platform where you're talking about being an overeater or binge eater, you don't get a lot of love or understanding. And this isn't to say that I was a victim of it of any sort. I think in any of these groups, you're very, very welcome, and people embrace you with open arms. But then I realized that maybe the mental health aspect that these groups were talking about was worth pursuing. So I remember one day I was in Portland, Oregon. I was biking to work a lot. I was always very active. I was a rock climber, tennis player, surfer. And I decided that I would no longer try to restrict myself. I would no longer have a negative story, internal or external, about binging. So I said, if I want to binge, I'm just going to go binge. And I would go to Sizzle Pie, I would go to the McDonald's drive-thru, I would go to the grocery store and just get a bunch of food, especially after like a stressful urgent care shift, and I would just binge. And I would just be very loving and accepting of myself. When I would go to bed that night, I'd get a lot of acid reflux, I would get a lot of palpitations. And of course, there was still that kind of fear in the back of my mind, like, man, you're doing so much damage to your body. But I would just kind of hold myself and love myself and accept that this was part of it. And there was never an intention to stop binging. I just didn't want to, like, binging already made me suffer. I didn't want to suffer twice. I didn't want to binge and suffer from the physical consequences of it and suffer because I binged and now I'm telling myself that I'm a bad person. Never having had the intention to stop binging, about a month or two later, I remember I had the urge to binge and I'm like, yeah, I'll just skip it. And I didn't do it. And I think after so many years, this is probably like 10, 15 years now that I've had time to reflect on this, I think when a negative habit no longer has the power to give you a negative feeling, when it's now totally acceptable, you no longer use it as a tool to punish yourself or to try to use it as a way to restrict yourself or manipulate yourself. So now binge eating was something totally normal. I could binge eat whenever I wanted. And it disappeared for years. It just never came back. I think the only times that I would get the urge to eat a lot or munch was if I had some alcohol with friends. But that's not uncommon. I think a lot of people after alcohol and after marijuana and certain other things may have the urge to eat something or eat a little bit more than usual. But again, there was never a story of, Mo, you totally binged. That's so bad. No, it was just like, I don't know, I guess I ate something. It tasted good. I liked it. And the binging has stopped. 2025, and I haven't binged. Maybe there's a few times when I'm like, oh man, I just had a little bit too much food. But that was it. Like, I'm like, oh, I had a little bit too much food. And if you asked anyone based on my activity level and exercise level, that probably wasn't even that much food. So should you try to just love and accept yourself and hope that the binging stops? Maybe. But I think much more importantly, loving and accepting yourself while you engage in habits that to you may be undesirable might just be a good, positive mental perspective. And if the side effect of that is that you stop doing those negative habits, great. But I'm not sure that trying to accept those things for the purpose of them going away is quite as positive. So I hope this is helpful, guys. I try to be vulnerable. I try to be open with my own experiences. I try to share patient experiences once there's been enough time between them so nobody can identify my patients. I try to share these things for you guys because it's a journey. And being a physician, being a health coach, I see things in myself reflecting in other people and vice versa. And I try to share that with you guys, and I try to take that to each and every patient experience so that I can be a better doctor. If you're comfortable, share anything negative that you've experienced before or any tips or tricks that you have for others. Check out drashori.com and take care.